My name is Nella Harper. The first thing I remember is the smell of charcoal and cheap beer on the 4th of July. I was 8, barefoot on the back deck, holding a sparkler that burned too fast. Dad had the grill going, smoke curling up into the dusk like it was trying to spell something in the sky. Mom was inside slicing watermelon, humming off-key to whatever was on the radio. My little brother Caleb was already asleep on the couch, thumb in his mouth, cheeks sticky with popsicle. That was the last summer everything felt easy. We lived in a split-level house on Maple Crest, the kind with faded green siding and a driveway that cracked every winter. Dad worked construction. Mom did night shifts at the hospital. Money was tight, but we had routines. Friday pizza, Sunday church, Saturday mornings where Dad would wake us with pancakes shaped like dinosaurs. He'd flip them high, grinning when they landed half on the plate, half on the floor. "Perfection's overrated," he'd say, ruffling my hair. High school blurred by in flashes, braces, first kiss behind the bleachers, the way Caleb started calling me Nels instead of Sissy. I got into state on a partial scholarship for graphic design. Dad drove me to campus in his rattling Ford, radio stuck on classic rock. He didn't cry when we unloaded boxes, just squeezed my shoulder too hard and said, "Make us proud, kid." I believed I would. College was freedom and fluorescent dorm lights. I met Gianna sophomore year in typography. He wore thick glasses and quoted obscure fonts like scripture. We stayed up until dawn redesigning album covers for bands that didn't exist. He said my laugh sounded like the bass line in a song he couldn't get out of his head. By junior year, we had an apartment off campus, mismatched mugs, a cactus named Kevin. I sent Dad photos. Gianna teaching me to grill steak, us at the holiday market holding paper cups of cocoa. Dad texted back thumbs-up emojis and, "That's my girl." Caleb, meanwhile, was spiraling. Skipped classes, hotboxed the basement, came home with a tattoo of a snake eating its own tail. Mom found pills in his sock drawer. Dad stopped flipping pancakes. The house smelled like tension and lemon cleaner. I came home less, told myself it was midterms, told myself distance was mercy. Senior year, Gianna proposed on the roof of the art building at sunset. He used a ring pop first, grape flavor, then slid the real diamond on after I laughed so hard I cried. I called Dad from the parking lot, voice shaking. He picked up on the third ring, sounding tired. "That's great, Nels. Real proud of you." Something in his tone felt off, like static under the words, but I was too high on yes to notice. The rehearsal dinner was at Giovanni's, red checkered tablecloths, too many breadsticks. 50 people crammed into a private room that smelled like garlic and wedding nerves. I wore the emerald dress Mom helped pick out. Gianna's parents flew in from Portland, all Patagonia vests and organic wine. Caleb showed up late, hair greasy, eyes red-rimmed. Dad kept glancing at him like he was a bomb with a lit fuse. Then came the toast. Dad stood, glass of Merlot trembling slightly in his hand. The room hushed except for the clink of ice in water glasses. He cleared his throat. "Some kids," he said, voice booming like it did on job sites, "some kids make you proud." His eyes flicked to me, soft for a second. "They work hard, they build something, they don't ask for handouts." A pause, the kind that sucks air out of lungs. "Others." He turned to Caleb, who was staring at his plate like it might save him. "Others just take up space, drag everybody down with them." The words hung there, heavier than the chandelier. Mom gasped, a small, wounded sound. Caleb's fork clattered. I felt it in my sternum, like someone had punched through bone. Gianna reached for my hand under the table, but I was already standing, chair scraping loud against tile. "Dad," I said, barely above a whisper. He didn't hear or pretended not to. He raised his glass higher. "To Nella and Gianna, may they keep making us proud." Glasses clinked. Someone laughed nervously. Caleb shoved back from the table, mumbling about the bathroom. I watched him go, shoulders folded in like broken wings. Dad sat down, face flushed, like he'd just finished a shift instead of torching his son in front of strangers. I didn't sleep that night. Jonah held me while I stared at the ceiling fan spinning lazy circles. "He didn't mean it," Jonah kept saying. But I heard the truth in the silence after. I was the good one. Caleb was the weight. And Dad had just drawn the line in blood. The wedding was in 6 weeks. I flew home the next morning, told Jonah I needed to fix things. He kissed my forehead, said, "Take all the time." The airport smelled like burnt coffee and anxiety. I kept replaying Dad's toast on loop, each syllable a splinter under my skin. Maple Crest looked smaller. The cracks in the driveway had grown into canyons. Mom met me at the door, apron dusted with flour, eyes puffy. "He's at the bar," she whispered, like Dad was a storm we had to tiptoe around. Caleb's room was locked. I pressed my ear to the door. Nothing but the low hum of his gaming PC. Dad came home after midnight, boots heavy on the stairs. I waited in the kitchen, lights off, the fridge humming like a witness. He flicked the switch, startled to see me sitting there with a glass of water I hadn't touched. "Nels." His voice cracked on the S. "Didn't know you were coming." I didn't answer right away, just watched the way his shoulders sagged, the way he wouldn't meet my eyes. "Some kids take up space," I said finally, soft enough that he flinched. "That what I am when I'm not the golden one." He rubbed the back of his neck, calluses rasping against stubble. "I was drinking. Tired." "Caleb's your son." My voice shook. Same blood, same stupid dinosaur pancakes. Dad opened the fridge, stared inside like answers were chilling next to the milk. "You don't see what I see. The lies, the money, the way he looks at your mom like she's the enemy. You're easy, Nels. You always were." Easy. The word landed between us like a thrown knife. I left before he closed the fridge door. Caleb was on the back deck at 2 a.m., smoking something that smelled like skunk and regret. Moonlight carved hollows under his eyes. He offered me the joint. I took it, coughed like a freshman. "He hates me," Caleb said, exhaling toward the stars. "Always has." "He's scared," I said. The smoke burned my throat. Doesn't know how to say it. Caleb laughed, bitter. "He says it just fine." We sat in silence until the cherry died. Then he told me everything, how Dad had bailed him out of jail twice, how Mom cried in the car outside the station, how Dad stopped looking at him like a son and started looking through him like glass. I listened until the sky turned dishwater gray. The next day I found Dad's old camcorder in the attic, buried under Christmas decorations and gilt. It still worked, battery icon blinking red like a heartbeat. I charged it while Mom napped, while Dad was at work, while Caleb played Fortnite with the volume too loud. I started recording. First clip, Mom in the kitchen, telling the story of how Dad proposed on a Ferris wheel, voice cracking when she got to the part where he cried. Second clip, Caleb at 15, teaching me to ride a bike in the street, his laugh bright as breaking glass. Third, Dad asleep in his recliner, TV flickering across his face, remote balanced on his belly like a surrender flag. I kept going. Old home videos, new confessions, voice memos from Caleb about the night he almost overdosed, Dad's drunken voicemail apologizing to no one. I edited on my laptop in the guest room, headphones on, tears dripping onto the trackpad. Hours bled into days. The wedding dress hung in the closet like a ghost I hadn't invited. Jonah called every night. "You okay?" I lied and said yes. He didn't push. That's when I knew I loved him enough to ruin everything. 2 weeks before the wedding, I drove to the community center where Dad coached Little League every Saturday. Kids in oversized helmets, parents in folding chairs. I sat in the bleachers with the camcorder hidden in my purse. Dad barked encouragement, voice hoarse but kind. A boy struck out, started crying. Dad knelt, wiped the kid's nose with the hem of his shirt. "Next time, buddy, we all swing and miss." I filmed it, every second. That night, I compiled everything into a 20-minute video. Title card in Dad's favorite font, impact, bold, and ugly. I called it The Space Between Us. Added subtitles so no one could miss a word. Music underneath. The song from our last family camping trip, the one Dad sang off-key around the fire. I didn't sleep, just watched the render bar crawl to 100%, green like poison. I flew back to campus with the video on a thumb drive taped inside my bra like contraband. Jonah picked me up at arrivals, kissed me like I'd been gone years instead of weeks. I smiled until my cheeks hurt, then told him I needed one more weekend at home before the wedding. He bought it. I was getting good at selling lies. The plan crystallized on the red-eye. The rehearsal dinner had been Dad's stage. The wedding reception would be mine. I booked the venue's AV guy separately. Cash, no questions. Told him it was a surprise family montage. He grinned like he'd seen worse. I paid double to keep his mouth shut. Back home, I moved like a ghost. Slept in Caleb's room when he crashed on the couch. Edited at 3 a.m. while Mom's oxygen machine hissed down the hall. Dad barely noticed. He was working overtime, coming home smelling of sawdust and silence. I left the thumb drive in plain sight on the kitchen counter once. He walked right past it. I recruited Caleb in the garage, surrounded by half-finished birdhouses and the smell of varnish. "You want in?" I asked, holding up the drive like a loaded gun. His eyes flicked to the house, then back to me. "He'll kill us." "No," I said. "He'll feel." Caleb took a shaky breath. "What do you need?" We rehearsed in whispers, timing, cues, escape routes. I made him memorize the remote sequence until his fingers shook less. Mom caught us once, asked if we were planning the bouquet toss. I kissed her cheek and said yes. The night before the wedding, I sat on the roof where Jonah proposed. City lights smeared below like wet paint. I called Dad. He answered on the fourth ring, voice thick with sleep. "Nels, everything okay?" "I just wanted to hear your voice," I lied. "See you tomorrow, Dad." He mumbled, "Love you." I hung up before the words could stick. Wedding day dawned syrupy gold. I walked down the aisle to a string quartet version of the song from the video. Dad's eyes shone when he gave me away. Pride, uncomplicated, mine for 30 more seconds. Jonah's vows made people cry. Mine were short. I was saving my words. Reception. Fairy lights, mason jars, the cake topper Jonah's mom insisted was vintage. Speeches started safe. Best man, maid of honor, Jonah's dad quoting Neruda. Then the MC, my AV guy in a borrowed tux, tapped the mic. And now, a special message from the bride's family. The lights dimmed. Screen descended like a guillotine. Dad frowned, confused. Mom dabbed her eyes, thinking it was cute. The video began. First frame, 8-year-old Caleb pushing me on a swing, both of us screaming with laughter. Dad's voice off camera. "Higher, kiddo, you're flying!" Gasps. Someone's phone flashlight bobbed. Cut to Dad teaching Caleb to bait a hook. Patient, sunburnt, proud. Then the crash. Caleb at 16, face swollen from a fight. Dad's hand on his shoulder. Steady, not shaking. Voiceover. Caleb now, raw. He was there every time I fell, until he wasn't. Clips accelerated. Dad carrying toddler me on his shoulders at the county fair. Dad teaching teenage Caleb to drive stick, both laughing when the truck lurched. Dad's voicemail after Caleb's first rehab stint. "I'm proud you're trying, son. Call me." The room was tomb quiet. I stood by the cake table, pulse in my throat. Dad's arrest report flashed. Public record, DUI, 2009. I'd found it in the attic with his medals, his face on screen, younger, terrified. Mom's hand flew to her mouth. Final sequence, Dad at Little League, kneeling for the crying kid. Zoom on his eyes. Same eyes that looked through Caleb at dinner. Subtitle: Some kids take up space, others just need room to grow. Music swelled, screen cut to black. For 3 heartbeats, nothing. Then Caleb hit the lights. Dad was on his feet, chair toppled. Turn it off. But the remote was in my hand now. I clicked to the last slide, a photo of all 4 of us at Christmas 2015, arms tangled, ugly sweaters, real smiles. Underneath, white text, "We're still your kids. Choose better words." I walked to the center of the dance floor, heels clicking like gunfire. "Dad," I said, voice steady for the first time in weeks. "That toast? It wasn't the alcohol. It was you deciding who's worth the air in this family." He opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Caleb stepped up beside me, shoulder to shoulder. "I'm not space," he said, voice cracking but loud. "I'm your son." Mom was crying openly now, clutching Aunt Linda. Jonah stood behind me, hand on my waist. Anchor, not rescue. Dad looked around the room. 50 faces, some strangers, all witnesses. His knees buckled. He sat hard on the edge of the stage, head in his hands, shoulders shaking. Not anger, something smaller. I knelt in front of him, wedding dress pooling like spilled milk. "You don't get to edit us out," I whispered. "Not anymore." The music stayed off. No one danced. The DJ hovered by his booth like a man waiting for permission to breathe. I stayed kneeling, veil brushing the floorboards, Dad's sobs muffled against his palms. Jonah's hand never left my back, warm, steady, the only thing keeping me from floating apart. Caleb broke first. He crouched beside Dad, awkward, like he'd forgotten how to touch him. "Hey," he said, voice raw. "Look at me." Dad did. Eyes bloodshot, face crumpled. Caleb pulled him into a hug that looked painful. 2 men who'd spent years building walls now trying to fit through the same crack. Dad's arms came up slow, like they'd rusted shut, then clamped around Caleb's back so hard I heard the air leave his lungs. Mom was already there, kneeling too, her small frame folding over both of them. I watched her fingers dig into Dad's shirt like she was anchoring him to earth. The 4 of us formed a knot in the middle of the dance floor, wedding guests frozen in a circle around us, phones down for once. Someone's champagne flute tipped, fizzing across the wood. The sound was absurdly loud. I stood, my legs shook, but the shaking felt earned. Jonah handed me the mic without a word. I hadn't planned to speak again, but the room needed air. "I didn't do this to hurt you," I said. My voice carried, thin but clear. "I did it so you'd feel the weight of your own words. Not just Caleb, me too. Because every time you lifted me up, you pushed him down. And I let you." I smiled for the photos. I said thank you. I thought if I was good enough, it would balance out. I swallowed. It doesn't work that way. Dad lifted his head. "Nels, Not yet." I cut him off gently. "You don't get to fix this with sorry tonight. You get to sit with it, like Caleb has, like I have." I turned to the room. "This isn't a movie. There's no swelling strings, no slow clap, just us, messy, real. And tomorrow, we start over, but not here." I nodded to the AV guy. He killed the projector. The screen went dark, reflecting 100 stunned faces. Then I did the thing I'd rehearsed in my head 1,000 times. I walked away. Not dramatic, not storming. Just 1 foot, then the other. Past the cake. Past Aunt Linda's open mouth. Past the uncle already whispering about family drama. Jonah followed. Caleb stayed with Mom and Dad, but he looked up as I passed, gave me the smallest nod, like I've got this now. Outside, the night air hit like cold water. The venue's garden was lit with string lights, paper lanterns swaying in the breeze. I kicked off my heels, felt the grass between my toes. Jonah caught up, slipped his jacket over my shoulders. "You okay?" he asked. "No," I said, "but I will be." We sat on a stone bench by the koi pond. The fish moved like slow ghosts under the surface. I leaned into him, listened to his heartbeat. After a while, the side door opened. Caleb stepped out alone, tie gone, shirt untucked. He lit a cigarette with shaking hands. "They're talking," he said, exhaling toward the sky. "Like really talking. Mom's crying. Dad's... I don't know. He asked me to stay tonight. Not in the basement, in my old room." I nodded, couldn't speak yet. Caleb flicked ash into the grass. "You didn't have to do that for me." "I didn't," I said. "I did it for us, all four of us." He looked at me then, really looked. "You're scary when you're quiet, Nels." I laughed. It came out wet. Learned from the best. He left the cigarette burning in the tray and hugged me hard, the kind of hug that leaves bruises in a good way. Then he went back inside. Jonah and I stayed until the lanterns dimmed. Guests trickled out in hushed pairs, throwing curious glances, but no one approached. When the caterers started stacking chairs, we walked to the parking lot. My phone buzzed. "Mom, he's asking for you. When you're ready." I didn't answer. Not tonight. We drove home with the windows down, city lights streaking across the windshield like comets. Jonah reached over, laced his fingers through mine. "Still, Mrs. Harper?" he asked. "Always," I said, just redefining the job description. 3 months later, Caleb started community college. Dad goes to his Tuesday classes, sits in the back row taking notes like a proud freshman. They text me photos, Caleb holding a syllabus, Dad holding coffee, both smiling like they're learning a new language. Mom sends voice memos, short, breathless updates about Sunday dinners that don't end in yelling. I still have the video. It lives on a password-protected drive labeled "Do Not Open." Some nights, when the apartment's quiet and Jonah's asleep, I almost click it. Then I close the laptop. The scar's there. No need to pick at it. Dad and I talk once a week. Not deep, not yet. Weather, work, the funny thing the dog did. But last Thursday he said, "I was wrong, Nels, about a lot." I let the silence sit. Then I said, "I know. Keep proving it." He will, or he won't. Either way, the space is mine to give now. I still design. Album covers, book jackets, the occasional wedding invite that isn't mine. Sometimes clients ask for something emotional. I think of that night, the way the room held its breath, the way love and rage can share the same heartbeat. I design accordingly. Jonah and I renewed our vows on the 1-year anniversary. Just us, a courthouse, tacos after. I wore jeans. He wore the same grin from the rooftop. No toasts, just rings and a promise. We choose each other. Every day, even the hard ones. The rain hit the window like static the night I finished this script. I watched the droplets race, thought about space, how it's not emptiness, just room. Room for mistakes, for second swings, for kids who fall and get back up. Room for dads who learn new words. Some kids make you proud, others teach you how to be human. I'm both, and that's enough.